Rabbi Uri Regev, director of Hiddush for Religious Freedom and Equality, says the Ministerial Legislative Committee's efforts to advance the earlier bill on military service exemptions for Haredi Orthodox is only an attempt to gain time from the High Court, while the same political and fundamental challenges on the issue remain. He told our reporter Nomi Segal that what may be different now is the force of the public sentiment in light of the post-October 7th security reality.
First of all, the bottom line is clear to me. It's intended only to gain time. It is not intended to draft any yeshiva students, certainly not those who don't want to be drafted. And it is an attempt, yet another one, to gain more time by pointing to the court. We are moving the procedure of legislating a new law. And we are moving forward, and in doing so, we are heeding to your ruling as of 2017, mind you. The previous law was already voided on constitutional grounds in 2017, so we are heeding to your order, and we are coming up with a new law.
This isn't really a new law. Perhaps by its submission, it's giving a basis for revision and amendment.
Oh, yes. We are launching the process. This bill was presented in January 22 and passed the first reading. And we are now going to, so they will claim, apparently. We are now going to be completing the legislative process, which started already 2.5 years ago. And of course, our sincere statement is that what was good in January of 22 is great in June of 24.
Many don't accept that assessment, including War Cabinet member and National Unity Party leader Benny Gantz, who endorsed it originally at the time. The main critique being heard is that post-October 7th, we are in a new situation.
Let me say the following. Benny Gantz is in a bind. Indeed, he submitted that bill, and his response yesterday was it was not a satisfying solution back then, and it's irrelevant today. I would go further to say that even then, when I looked at the bill, it seemed to me to be a bogus bill. It was not intended to draft yeshiva students then either. Though ironically, it caused the ire of the Haredi political leadership, who are now seeming to go along with it because, as far as they're concerned, it's about damage control. Their position has not changed. Their position was no yeshiva student who is studying or is registered studying should be drafted. And the bill attempted to establish quota, a very, very modest quota for drafting, for enlisting yeshiva students. But of course, it was not realistic then. We are dealing with a group, a cohort of about 12,000 Haredi young people who reach the age of 18 annually. And the number keeps growing, of course, because of the birth rate. So what they said is we'll start out by drafting a little over 1,200 out of the 12,000. And then each year we'll raise it a little bit. But of course, this is a bluff, and it was a bluff then, and we need to remember, this came not that much after it turned out that the whole recording system was fraudulent. That the numbers that they reported to the Knesset and to the public and to the government were false. They just made up the numbers. And what we know now is that beyond making up the numbers, the criteria for who is Haredi was bogus, because it included all kinds of young people who were never Haredi or who were no longer Haredi, and it listed them as Haredi. So all in all, please understand, this attempt is not to meet the crisis of today when it is evident to everybody that Israel, that the IDF, that the Jewish people need to enlist everyone who is capable of serving. And because our defense needs, our national needs, beyond the general abstract principle of equality, our national needs are such that we need to increase the size of the army and the other sectors that are serving are just not meeting that need.
So,
following what we all know now after October 7th.
So zooming out then, would you say that given these elements, that it is possible to find a solution that will address the issue, the principle of equality of service, that will address the material, concrete need for people to serve, when it seems that the conduct so far still is remaining within the realm of politics?
I want to be very open and honest about it. I read the ultra-Orthodox media on a daily basis. There isn't going to be an openness, willingness, consent to serve. There will be some that will serve. There are those that serve now, and this number may be slightly growing because of the phenomenon of, Chazarat She'ela, those who leave the ranks, or those who feel that even though they are pursuing a complete Haredi mode of life, they believe that they can reconcile it with military service, and the IDF is doing everything in its power and bending over backwards in order to make that possible. But still, I believe that when we look at the larger picture and the question that you are raising, the answer is they're probably not going to succeed. Whatever they legislate will not work. Why is there such a rejection? It's twofold. One is, of course, the psychological, ideological, personality understanding, human nature understanding, that if these young people were going to expose to the real world, even if with layers of protection, of insulation, that's going to open their eyes and make some question whether that is the path of life they want to pursue. And therefore there is a survivalist element, because everything they do, the refusal to teach core curricular studies, the refusal to have television, the refusal to listen to the radio, the refusal to have smartphones, etc., to learn English, etc., etc. All of that is intended to create a sheltered community with a sheltered young generation that would carry on the tradition and heed to the edicts of their elders. That's the survivalist element. But they are not satisfied with the survivalist element. They add an ideological, a theological layer to that, and that is You think that the army is protecting Israel? You don't know what you're talking about. First of all, the Hamas and the COVID-19 before it. And they go as far as explaining that the Holocaust happened not because of the Nazis and not because of this virus and not because somehow Sinwar operated on his own, but they're all God divinely ordained. As a punishment, as a token of the messianic times that are about to occur, there are a number of reasons given. God did it, and God does only what's best for the Jewish people, and we may not understand why it's best, we may not understand why it's justified, but that's how it is. Nothing happens here, including the massacre on October 7th, without God ordaining it. And the other side of that theological coin is, and therefore the answer is not IDF. The answer is not weapons. The answer is not America. The only answer is heeding to and meeting what God wants of us. And that is that we study Torah, that we enhance our study in a total commitment and lead in completely holistic observance, including the prayer and Sabbath observance and family purity, etc., etc.
And yet, wouldn't you say that after the traumatic events of October 7th, there was some sentiments within the community that cultivated a sense of solidarity?
Well, the answer is twofold. One, of course, there is an element of solidarity. They mourn for the fallen. The hurt is felt by everybody. But that does not change the other ideological, theological elements or the survivalist instinct. So what's the answer? The answer is the Knesset and the government needs to do what is intrinsic to a state which declares itself to be democratic and Jewish. And the principle of equality requires that we expect all of them to serve. We should and can make exceptions for a small quota of excelling students, and we should be rewarding them and providing them with subsidies, etc., and make it possible for them to study. But everybody else should serve. The first refusal should be given to the army, and then those who the army does not see fit should do civil service. If they don't, then the answer is very simple, except this government is refusing to acknowledge them. If not, then none of them should be continuing to receive state funding. The individuals shouldn't receive state funding. The yeshivas that harbor them shouldn't receive state funding. The rabbinic institutions that promote an anti-draft philosophy in teaching should not receive state funding. So we may not be able to force them to serve, but to promote the refusal to serve and perpetuate it with hard-earned state funding, taxpayers' money, that is the height of absurd, which is, of course, part of the elements that are before the Supreme Court now, which is addressing both the question of draft and the question of continued subsidies for those that refuse to abide by the draft law. I have a feeling that the depth and the strength of the crisis now and the public uproar and the political realization that there is price to be paid for those who are not going to heed to this clear majority public will are going to be sanctioned by the public. I think all of that puts us in a place where we were never before, and I have a sense that we may now see for the first time in the 76 years of Israel's history an opportunity to turn in a different direction.
Rabbi Uri Regev, Director of Hiddush for Religious Freedom and Equality.